Awesome. Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to get going. It is 11 o'clock on the dot, and I am thrilled that we have Josh Stern joining us today. He is he's sitting there in Alaska, so he is. This is actually a big ask and a big sacrifice for him. Just give us some time. Not only is he in Alaska, but today is his coaching day. Isn't that right, Josh?
Yep.
So Josh is. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I get to do a lot of coaching consulting of other agents, and most of them are also running pretty big businesses. And then I do the consulting for my brewery, which you can see I'm wearing the brewery shirt today.
I love that. He has started his own brewery. That's a hard word to say. Company. So what we normally do have a few announcements up front, but we are going to start right off with Josh and get going so that we can use as much time as he has available for us. But just want to say a couple things real quick. So Josh Stern, if you don't know the Stern team, they are based out of Salt Lake, the Salt Lake office. And he has ran his team there for how many years, Josh?
Well, let's see. That team started in 2004.
2004.
That's when I made my first hire.
Yeah. Oh, turn it up that way. So first hire in 2004. And Josh has built a mega team. He is in Gary Keller's top 100. Is that correct? It might even be top 50 or maybe the top one.
No, but they've expanded that group a little bit, which is awesome. We get a lot of conversations with a lot of great agents. I have no idea if we're in the top 100 or not, but we're still in the group, which is a good sign.
Yep. But what's amazing about Josh is he's built a massive team. He definitely knows what he's doing. He's been through the steps. And if there's anyone that has been a good example to me and many others about following the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, it's Josh. And Josh, I would love to hear. I know I missed a few things in there, and feel free to brag about yourself for a second. Don't hold anything back, so that we know how amazing you are. But if you'll introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your journey and where things are at today.
Well, I'm sitting in Alaska. I bought a house in Homer, Alaska last year. And so, I'll be spending my summers here for the foreseeable future, which is awesome. It's pretty cool to be able to be a business owner, and be able to run a business that's not in the state that you live. So this really, for me, kind of all started with the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, which I believe not enough people have read. And most people that have read it once from cover to cover need to go back and read it as a manual, because that book is as relevant a manual for building a big real estate business, or actually any business at this point. It's just as relevant today as it was, when it was written back in 2004, which is why I'm here. I read this book, and for the very first time in my life, somebody said, here's a plan to get from A to Z, Z being the freedom that I want to have, which is what you guys see me doing right now. Nobody had shared with me in college or high school or anything like that, an actual plan that tells you, if you want to be successful, here's what you do. And so that book for me became a manual. It's still as relevant today, like I said, as it is, as it was when it came out. And it is absolutely the one thing that has caused me to have my butt sitting in this chair in Alaska right now. I think last year the team did about 375 transactions for 137 million in production. And so, a big part of that is building things with the end in mind. So the team is approximately 25 people between admin, ISA, showing agent, buyer agent, listing agent, director of sales, director of operations. And I think we even have a virtual assistant on there too, which assists on the admin side. So this is building with the end in mind. When you read the MREA book, there's this thing called a 7th level business. And I noticed one of the mistakes that I had made really early on in real estate is holding myself back by, goal setting year to year instead of having a goal for 10 years that I could then backtrack to a 5-year goal, that I could then backtrack again to a 3-year goal, which could backtrack to a 1-year goal, which could backtrack to a quarterly goal, which tells me what am I doing, each day, each week, each month to hit these numbers, being able to build through these things. So critical errors, hiring out of emergency to fill a seat instead of being disciplined with who it is that I'm hiring. Some of you guys right now, I think you can't even imagine having a big team. And I would sort of cause you to maybe rethink that. I'm not unique in my ability to do what it is that I've done. I simply followed the models that Keller Williams put forward, but I thought big enough and thought, look, if I'm willing to do what others won't for 10 years, I'll be doing what others wish they could do for the next 30. And you have to sort of believe that. I think a lot of people think that it's too hard to build a team. And I can just tell you right now, it's equally as difficult just being an individual agent as it is, systematically building a team.
Can I ask you a question on that? So who do you have to be, Josh, or who do we have to become as a person mentally? Who do we have to become to be that person to grow a team, if that's our desire, to have a team the size of yours?
Oh man. Well, there's a really good class coming up that is going to be, I think, in the Orem office, or maybe it's at your office. I'm not 100% sure. It's the Quantum Leap class. The Quantum Leap talks about the science of success, or the 6 personal perspectives that cause you as an individual the ability to see things differently, such that by doing so you can achieve anything that it is that you want in your life. You just have to believe it's possible. So really the first personal perspective they'll probably talk about is being learning based but action oriented. And so one of the gifts that I had innately was that I was curious all the time, like, how do I do this, or how do I do that? Or I'd go to these seminars or family reunions or anything along those lines. I would go and I would learn, but the difference between me and a lot of other people is that I would actually execute on at least one thing from every single event that I took. So being learning based is one thing, but just understanding that you've got these people that are out there that are kind of like perpetual seminar goer tours, where they're learning for learning's sake, and that's not the execution that you guys want. The execution is what taking one thing from every event and then coming back to your business with that one thing, and then committing to executing that one thing before you move on to the next thing, is what I did very well early on. Just one thing at a time, but executing on it.
Awesome. And one thing that I didn't mention here is, so this whole topic, we're talking around leverage, which is amazing to see Josh in Alaska. His team is still running. This isn't the first time that you have stepped away as well. I think you did a travel around the United States. Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. So in 2019, we took the entire year off, and I had a truck with a camper in the bed of it. My wife and I went from Utah to the bottom of Baja, Mexico, all the way up to the Arctic Ocean, and took the entire year off. I worked exactly 16 hours in the year of 2019.
That's incredible. So if you talk about leverage, he's got it figured out. And so what we'll do is I've got a couple questions around leverage, and then I know that Josh would be happy to answer any question. But let's cover a few of those topics. And so keep in mind, if you guys have questions, write them down, and we will have an opportunity for you guys to ask questions as soon as we go through some of these things. So Josh, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, how do you know, so if we are, I would say most of the agents here in this room are maybe looking at their first hire, second, or possibly third, somewhere in that phase. How do you know what production level, maybe what budget model, or when should we hire so that we're not making those early mistakes?
Well, I guess number one, be willing to make the mistake when you hire repeatedly. So as soon as I read the MREA book in 2004, I made the decision that I needed to hire my first assistant, right? I had done 27 transactions the year before, and I read about all of these successful people. They were called snapshots of a millionaire agent that are in the back of the MREA book. And one of the things that was common is they said if they had to do all over again, they would have hired an assistant the first year. So I'm like, okay, number one, hire an assistant. I don't know if I'm ready. I didn't know how to hire, so I hired the wrong assistant. And by the way, the wrong assistant still got me further than no assistant. Then I hired another wrong assistant and another wrong assistant and another wrong assistant and another one. So I was willing to hire and not, you know, I just never gave up. And I see a lot of people, they'll hire their first one, they hire wrong. It costs them money. It's harder, whatever it is. And then they don't do it again. And I think that's a huge mistake. Be willing to hire wrong. Look at the bright side. They got you farther than you could have gotten on your own. But then you have to ask yourself, even before you hire from a production standpoint, what kind of systems do you have in place? Leverage is not just people, but leverage is also systems. You know, I taught the 8x8 33 touch class for probably close to a decade. And in the decade of teaching that class, there were only a handful of people that ever had put together their own 33 touch and 8x8. So the very first thing that I would want to know, you know, with any of you guys out there is, do you have your 36 touch in place? Do you have that executed? Is it systematic? Is it every time you meet somebody, which could be just over a telephone call, you get all of their information and permission to put them on your VIP system, that'll keep them posted to what's happening with the local real estate market. So you're constantly feeding that database. They go through an 8x8 and then into your 36 touch system, which, you know, you guys, back in the day when I started running this thing, I had to make up all of my own marketing materials for this. And it was a freaking joke. Like, I've looked at some of the stuff that I sent out the first year that I did this, and it's hilarious. I had hair then, but it's hilarious. Like, now you guys have this thing called Command where so many of these action plans are already created for you. And the caution that I would give you on this is, don't send out everything via email. You should have a system that includes email, text messages, phone calls, and direct mail. A combination of those things should be able to get you, you know, the results that you look for. And if you read pages 132 to 148 in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, that's the lead generation model system. They say for every 12 people you stay in touch with that system, that you'll generate 2 transactions. One would be referred and one would be direct. And if you understand that, then you have to ask yourself, why don't I have this system put in place? So systems are leverage just like people are leverage, right? And here's another common mistake, and this is one that I also made. But, you know, if you look at the MREA organizational model, your first assistant hire, you know, brings you to level 2, and then people move to level 3 and they think that they need to hire a buyer agent. Well, that's not true. You actually need another assistant. So you have an assistant who's now handling, you know, all of your marketing systems, which is going to bring in more business. But now you have assistant who is handling your transaction coordinating, your customer care coordinator, your listing coordinator. Your marketing person is your events coordinator. And that was a big mistake that I had made early on, is I kept trying to hire buyer's agents after my first assistant hire. So be careful, don't do that, because it doesn't work. And those of you who have tried it already know what I'm talking about. The reality is, now the model shows that your first agent hire that you bring on board is actually a showing agent. And that's super smart, because a showing agent acts as basically a bottleneck reliever for you as you get too busy. You're too busy, your primary busyness is going to be, or your time is going to be spent showing properties. And that's problematic for you because it prevents you from doing listing appointments, working on your business, or doing other buyer appointments. And so the very first hire, you know, that an agent would make for an agent hire would be a showing agent that earns the right through your systems and your process to become a buyer agent, but they don't start as a buyer agent. So big mistake is I think agents are always looking for a way to hire things that don't cost them out of pocket. So we tend toward a buyer agent, and that's not the solution. It creates a lot more chaos than it does solutions for your long-term growth. Did
You,
that
you
help?
meant absolutely. You mentioned something in there that that I felt like is very true. That you hire and then you make the mistake. You mentioned like 4 or 5. I didn't count, but the amount of admin that you went through. Do you have a time frame that you went through those? Like, how do we know at what point do we say, hey, this isn't working? We need to make a change and then go back to the drawing board and start over.
I'd say that, I mean, for the majority of those cases, it was probably 6 months. So I went
For
through
each person?
this, yeah, roughly. So I went through this like 3-year period. Actually, it was my 4th year that I finally hired Mike Branch, who was with me for a decade. She retired about 4 years ago. But she was with me for a decade. That was my first great hire. And the way that that happened was I was talking with my then business coach. His name's Scott Agnew. He actually owns the Utah region for Keller Williams. And he's like, we got to solve for this. Obviously, you're not paying your people enough. How much are you paying your assistants? I'm like, I don't know, $12 an hour. He's like, what kind of quality of person are you getting for $12 an hour? And I'm like, well, you can already see what's happened. He's like, well, what do you have to pay to get real talent? And I was like, back then it was like $36,000 a year plus bonuses on transactions. He's like, well, here's what I want you to do is I want you to go pull out a home equity line of credit, so you can afford to pay that person, that real talent, real money, so you can get them and keep them. And he's like, by the way, Josh, if you've got this on your home equity line of credit and that's how you're paying them, you will hold them accountable. If they're not the right hire, you'll let them go very quickly. I didn't pull out a home equity loan, but I did erase out of my checkbook the amount of money for that year that I'd have to be able to hire real talent. So visually, I couldn't see that money sitting in my account. I just erased it. That was it. That was it for me. That allowed me, to finally get somebody who was real talent, a real workhorse. She was so valuable to me that even in retirement, for 4 years of her retirement, she still profit shared from my team.
That's really powerful. That's so. Do you have any guidance or recommendations on what production level we should be at as agents before we start looking at maybe that first hire, first assistant, second assistant?
I would say, first assistant, you're probably 24 transactions. I think a lot of times what happens is people will sort of bring in like temporary or stopgap assistants. So they'll hire an outside transaction coordinator to help with transactions. I think that's a good short-term fix, but I think long-term, you have to bring all of that in-house. So you have to have your first assistant, I would say would be 24 transactions, and they're doing all of your transaction coordinator, but they're also helping you set up your 36 touch system, your 8x8 system. They're acting as listing coordinators, scheduling showings for you. So they're doing a lot of things that cause you to be able to do the things that actually make money in the real estate business. And by the way, there are only 5 things that make money in real estate. The first one might surprise you. It's scripts. So if you guys aren't practicing your scripts, shame on you. The Stern team still practice their scripts every single day. This is a skill-based business, and it's the most skills-based that it's ever been. So scripts are huge. Lead gen, lead follow-up, they're not the same thing. So I guess that's 3 items. And then you've got appointments and contracts. Contracts could be listing buyer brokers, but contracts can also be real estate purchase contracts that lead to closings. Those are the only 5 things that generate money in this business. And those are the things that you have to be spending your time on. So when you're spending your time on all of these other things, that's why you need an assistant. So 24 transactions is about the right number, but people can do it with less transactions than that, and then fast track. You could do it with 15 transactions and then just keep fast tracking. Grow quicker than I did. Took me forever. There are these young people that are in Gary's group that are doing, 2, 3, 4 times the business that we are, if you can believe it. And they were agents for 3 years before they got into Gary's group. So you can do it quick.
I love that. Is there anything that so we talked about admin, the first hire,
Mhm.
second hire.
Yep.
Do you take the same approach when you're looking for an agent and looking on so instead of the admin side, do you take the same approach on the agent side? Or if it's
Like,
different, how would it be different?
are you talking about in terms of where am I at transactionally before I bring somebody in?
Well, that would be great
An
to
agent?
know. But
Okay.
hiring and knowing how to knowing who to hire and how
Yeah.
to move forward that way.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on it. I would say if you're tracking, 36 transactions or more, that you should probably bring yourself in a showing agent. That would be your first agent hire. Remember, the showing agent earns the right to become a buyer's agent through your tutelage. Um, in terms of who to hire, I'll tell you right now, all of your best hires are going to come from your database. Um, so if you don't have a systematic way of communicating with your database, especially when it's time to grow, then you're probably going to go and do what most agents do, and that is they hire the newly licensed folks or maybe people that are underperforming in a market center and try to fix them or make them into something. But the real talent has left a track record of success throughout their working life. And if you know the people in your database, if you're in communication with them, you'll know who those people are. And then at some point, you're going to grow confident in your ability to build a business. You should have that confidence because you can then demonstrate that confidence to the people in your SOI. And you can say, listen, Tyler, why are you doing this and not what I'm doing? Like, really, out of all people I know, you should be the guy doing what it is that I'm doing. Here's a book. You ought to read that. Maybe give me a call in a couple of weeks. We can chat about your ahas. That book's the MREA book. And by the way, that's exactly what I've done, to hire my director of lead generation and my director of operations, who have been leaders in my business for the last 6 and 8 years. They came from my SOI. They were in my SOI for many, many years before they joined the team. The other thing that you're really going to need to do is take that career visioning course as often as possible, and certainly no less than twice a year. But if you really want to get on the fast track to growing your business, then figure out how to take it once a month or once every other month. You guys are fortunate that a lot of this stuff comes to your region now. You're also fortunate that a lot of it is available through like Zoom or webinar formats. Back in the day when I've gone to probably 30 plus career visionings over my years. And back in the day, I used to have to fly to them. So I'd have to get a hotel room. I'd have to get a plane ticket, but the good thing about that is I was committed. And the other good thing about that is, unlike the Zooms, I was actually attending when I was in attendance of those classes. So I actually paid attention. So if you do take like a Zoom class, something like that, just make sure you don't have your phone sitting next to you. Give it to Tyler.
Yeah, I'll answer your calls for you.
Yep.
So I'm going to open it up to questions in just a second. So think about the questions you guys might have. But I want to know, Josh, is there anything that you would say in today's market? It is a little bit more unique than we've experienced in the past, but is there anything that you would say would be different? Or any mindset that you feel like we should change in around all of this regarding the now?
I think a big thing is just constantly focusing on your value proposition and your scripting around that value, because your job in this market is to find the ready, willing, and able sellers and the ready, willing, and able buyers. You've got to be able to have your net cast broad enough to where you're working with people that can actually buy. I mean, because right now, you've got too many people that are working with that $300,000 buyer, and that's just because we're using $300,000 scripts, $300,000 mofers, which are making offers for immediate response. And so, really, the biggest thing that I think you guys can do is learn how to write a winning offer, but then learn the scripting that causes your buyers to nod their head while you're writing that offer. Because if you're not directing the dialogue, then you're reacting to it. And when you react to dialogue, you're not going to help get your client what it is that they want. Your job is to be a guide, and that guide has to communicate. And the communicating isn't saying, so, I mean, it is a tight market and all. And so when we write this offer, we might want to do like an escalation clause, maybe, or something like that. We might have to offer above, appraised value. It's not like that. It's like, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And here's why. But to even get to that point, you guys had demonstrated, through your scripting and your knowledge, you've demonstrated that knowledge, which is the currency that allows you to earn the trust of your client to have that dialogue. So practicing scripts is going to be huge. Knowing your market, knowing how to win as a buyer is going to be huge. Knowing how to find the motivated when it comes to the sellers is huge. There's a ton of competition out there. In the Shift book, they talk about the law of equilibrium. So as real estate sales go up, so do the amount of sale agents. Many people have, that are sitting in this room right now have probably been in the business a year or less. And that's just because more people are in the real estate industry than ever before. So how are you setting yourself apart from your competition? What is your true value proposition? Are you spending time on the KW Pivot Shift Ahead page, which, Tyler, you should share with them every day, every morning when you wake up? Are you spending some time on that so you can gain that knowledge that you need to be able to then go spend that currency with your clients and separate yourself from the competition?
Awesome. Love it. What questions do we have out here? We have Josh for probably another 15 minutes. We'll take you as long as you'll give us.
Yeah, I got about another 15 before
okay.
I have to hop on a coaching call.
Now's your chance. What questions do you guys have?
Oh, don't be shy. We haven't even talked about like, how do I,
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
The question was, is radio advertising effective?
So radio advertising is effective. It's effective for us over the long term. When I was probably 4 or 5 years into the business, I got my first, foot in the water with radio marketing, and I recorded my own television commercial. I'd looked at this guy named Russell Shaw because he was part of the mastermind group that Keller Williams had put together, even though he wasn't with Keller Williams. And I listened to what he was doing on the radio, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, so that's what I need to do. Great. So I came back and I gave it a try, and it didn't really work very well. And I realized, oh my God, if it doesn't work right away, I'm gonna drown in debt, because radio advertising is super expensive in the state of Utah. So what happened was, following the budget model, you're supposed to be spending around 9.2% of your gross commission income in lead gen. Well, I started opening and closing my books monthly like a market center would, and I found that I was underspending that for a good period of time. So what I did is I took that money that I was underspending, the difference between 5%, let's say, and 9.2%, I would take that 4.2%, I would put it in a separate account that I labeled radio advertising. When that account hit $80,000, I pulled the trigger with a secondary company called Rate, which is radio and television experts, and had the money that I needed to be able to effectively radio market and be able to do it long enough that I would get the results that I needed. So radio marketing takes a while for it to work. And so if you don't have $60,000 or $80,000 that you can spend on radio marketing, then you might not have enough money to be able to see the end result. So yes, it works. It does work. It works really well. And there's a couple of different ways to go about it. My way of going about it was through celebrity endorsers, people that people already trust referring me. There are also ways to do radio marketing where you're just making an offer for immediate response. Where you're just running a 30-second commercial ad during the commercials. But radio is getting more diluted as streaming becomes more popular. And so one of the things that we've just started doing in the last 6 months is started marketing in the streaming world through iHeartMedia. What I found about streaming is a lot more cost effective from a radio advertisement, but it's also a lot more difficult to measure the results of radio marketing. So we're still kind of new to the streaming part of radio marketing, but that's something that's changing.
I like something while we're thinking of another question. I like what you touched on. You were underspending in an area. That's another example of him just taking the book and saying, I'm supposed to spend 9.2% towards lead gen. He was underspending, so he decided, what else can I spend money on? Which is a little bit, I mean, what's good to know is he wasn't overspending, but sometimes it's very tempting to keep that money instead of reinvest it into your business. And is there anything that you would say for any of us that might be challenged to reinvest that? Maybe keep it rather than put it back into your business?
I love what you said, because it really is just an investment. So if we start thinking long term, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, you have to start thinking about investing. And so for me, investing in my business was huge. And now I invested in real estate, and I invested in taxable pre-tax brokerage accounts, right? The markets. But investing in my business always generated the most, return for me and the most leverage for me. And so the problem is most people won't invest in their business if they don't know what they're spending in their business. So it's important, I think, to understand, the MREA2 chart of accounts. It's important for you guys to have a bookkeeper or do it yourself, like I did for many years. I spent two hours one Saturday per month keeping my own books and then running my own pivot table to see where am I in terms of my expenses. And if that's the case, then I know that I'm underspending in certain places, or maybe I'm overspending. If I underspend, though, then what I want to do is I want to take that money and put it somewhere where it generates, a 4-time to 10-time rate of return. That can be done through personnel, personal leverage, right? So if you're hiring people, they should be able to generate a rate of return, but it can also be done in marketing, right? So if I'm underspending in marketing, then I can take those dollars and invest them somewhere where I can measure or get a rate of return, an ROI. But again, you won't know that unless you're opening and closing your books monthly.
Love that. Questions? He can't hear you without the mic.
Thanks. Hey, Josh.
Oh, hey.
Just curious, how much would you spend right now for a first-time assistant? What would it take to hire talent? If it was years ago, 38 or whatever, what would it be now?
I think it's got to be, like as a base salary, it's got to be 40,000 or north of 40,000. Now, what you can do is you can figure out you have a fixed cost and a variable cost. So the salary is a fixed cost. So when you're hiring, you've got to offer enough of that fixed cost to where talent's like, okay, because by the way, your talented people are already working. They're just not really super stoked about where they are because they've hit a ceiling of opportunity, or maybe they just don't like the industry that they're in. So you've got to offer enough money to make them feel good about making that change. But then talent wants opportunity, right? So in order to retain really, truly talented people, then you have to have some sort of variable cost that comes in. So let's say it's a bonus per transaction, assuming they're licensed, right? And that's every single person on our team, including our customer care coordinator, listing coordinator, every single person on our team has a real estate license. So we can offer bonuses based upon a deal, right? We also, when we bring in that first assistant, remember, we're bringing in the people that they know into our system, our 36 touch system, right? So we're now staying in touch with them. When we get a transaction out of them, we pay that assistant a referral fee. So you can actually build additional income through referral fees. You can build additional income form per transaction. Long-term, your director of operations can do profit sharing as well. Because that first admin hire, you're not just hiring an admin, you guys. Your very first hire that's an assistant, their KPA should look like a director of operations KPA.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Good question. Who else? How's your time? Top agent in the state.
They're scared.
Yeah. Whether
Don't want to ask the wrong question.
the question is, what is your value proposition?
So just, are you talking about from the real estate listing side? Or are you talking about from the
Say again.
buyer side? So, the listing side, it's going to be, we've got a database of over 30,000 plus registered buyers. Odds are one of them is going to be a fit for your home. Through our pre-marketing strategic grand opening strategies, we're guaranteed to get your property sold for more money in less time. The majority of our properties right now, 87% of them are selling for multiple offers. Last week, we had one that sold for over $100,000 above list price. I think we should get together.
Have you ever said that before?
Yeah. Do you guys hear that? If you need a testimonial on scripts, there it is right there. That was awesome, Josh. Did that answer your question? What else?
And by the way, for those of you guys who are sort of individual agents and you don't have quite the numbers that we have, you use the we and then talk about your market center stats. So I promise you this, Keller Williams South Valley Market Center has better than average statistics in terms of selling, list to sale price, in terms of days on market, in terms of properties sold. The difference is that when you're talking about those things, instead of saying we're saying we.
Sounds about the same to your clients.
It does. It is the same. Great question, by the way.
One question that I have in here is, this is a production question. If we're trying to say, let's just add one pillar to our business, is there one thing that you would say would be a good area of focus in today's market?
For sure, the SOI, right? That 12 and 2 return, but most people aren't going to get that return because they don't have that stay in touch system set up. And most of them that have the system set up, they're not going to succeed with it because they're not doing the prospecting based part of it, which is 4 phone calls a year, because they're afraid, because they don't know what to say. So they just don't call their people. Thing is, you guys understand simply this: sales is about relationships, right? So it's not about doing a deal today. It's about earning a relationship and that trust over time. So again, you're building this thing with the end in mind. How big can I build my database and how strong can I make those relationships? So in my database, I'm always like trying to connect people with our preferred vendors. Like, don't ever go to the phone book or, Google for, plumbers, electricians, things like that. I've got the people you make sure that you use me for. How about this time of year? Your people just received their tax notices. Did you know that you can help them to dispute their tax notices? So why wouldn't somebody just put on a Zoom webinar for their own people and teach everybody at the same time how to dispute the taxes? And then you can provide the comparables for them to do those tax disputes. That's providing value. When you provide value, you earn the right to that relationship, and those people will refer you. And then they'll use you themselves. And by the way, the other part of this is just understanding that 12 and 2 return. One of those is your SOI referring you. Well, we always ask for the business, but the one thing that we always do is we teach people how to send us the business. So Tyler, thanks for thinking about that. Listen, Tyler, now that I've turned on your reticular activator, you're going to run into somebody who's thinking about buying or selling the home, I'm pretty sure, in the next 30 days. All I'm asking, Tyler, is that you're willing to give me a call, email, or text. So there's 100% chance that I can get in touch with them. And I promise I'll make you look good. So what I'm trying to do every single time is that I talk to you is train you how to send a referral over to me. That's a good one. Here's one that's an easy one that I think is missed pretty often, and that is marketing on KSL. That one's I think our number one lead generator is marketing on KSL classifieds. And the way that we market, we do it in different ways, right? So you can have people call you directly, or you can have people register in your website, or there's a third way, and that is they can text in for information about a property. to get more photos, So, I mean, if you go to KSL and you look at the Stern team, listings, you'll see the different ways that we market through KSL. We market 3 different ways through KSL, but that's our number 1 lead generator. So if you're not doing that, there's a good freebie for you. I mean, that costs you nothing. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of your time to do it.
Does that look like posting your listing on KSL? Is that what you're saying? Or what is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, posting your listing on KSL, exactly.
Awesome.
Here's another one that we do every single week on the Stern team: open houses.
I was just gonna touch on that. I kind of use that method, the KSL idea. And so it's just an open house, and I'll throw it on Marketplace and KSL 3 months ago. And then someone's like, hey, this house is like great. Is it still available? Like, no, it's on the contract. Anyway, I got a listing lead from it. And it's 3 months ago. I didn't do anything for it technically. And so I just, like you said, it's free, easy, simple, and you can get it. So I got a fish.
Yeah, that's great, man. So remember that properties that are under contract, the NAR says statistically that 24% of offers that are accepted between a buyer and a seller will fail. And so one of the big things that you want to do with those is just explain to these people that called in on a property that's already under contract that, look, even though it's under contract, let's see if we can get an appointment to take a look at it, because worst case scenario, we can write a backup offer on that. But I think moving forward, how long have you been doing this? 2-3 months? You've been doing it on your own. So probably all the properties that you've actually been able to get a hold of an agent on were under contract. And listen, I understand that. Most of the buyers that we run into have been trying this on their own unsuccessfully for a while. So what we've done is we've created a VIP buyer system that takes your very specific buyer criteria. We enter that into the realtor's computer system. And what that does is it gives you instant access to properties that match exactly what you're looking for, literally as they become available. So we could be the first out to that property, weed out the competition, and get you under contract on a property that you want. I don't mind doing this for you. It only takes about 20, maybe 30 minutes. When's a good time to get together?
Awesome.
Excellent.
Love that. We got a question right here.
So here's my question. So we talk a lot about lead with revenue, and that sounds good economic sense to me. But I also noticed that you talked about your coach saying, go ahead and take the home equity line of credit to get some real talent. And I also understand why they suggested that. So do you have maybe a suggestion for a new agent on what you have found in your experience was worth going out on a limb and maybe not waiting for the revenue to go out and get it because you felt like the return was worth it, and other things that you can easily say, definitely wait for the revenue to lead?
If you're looking for something that's immediate and easy, that'll cost you money, that's usually the red flag. That's usually I'm going to go buy the leads, but I don't even have a system set up for following up with leads that I'm buying, right? That's usually the indicator. Normally speaking, the best investment that you're going to make will be an investment in talent, people investment. And that's true. That's true for me. It's true for the teams that I coach. The best investment that you can make is going to be in people. Financially, they're going to produce the greatest long-term result. The problem that people have is, Tyler, do me a favor, go to the whiteboard behind you, grab a pen, and draw a big giant check mark. Just a check. Okay. On the top left part of that check, write the word I, like as in me, but I. And then down at the bottom of that check, write the word we. And at the very top part of that check, write the word they. This is all about working with people. So if I do it, my profitability is good. But as soon as I bring we into the game, I have to take a step back and understand that it takes time for talent to be able to develop and to develop a rate of return for the business. Also, it takes time for me to help train these people. Thankfully, Keller Williams has a lot of training that can help your assistants. So it's not all on you, but very few people make it through the we stage. And the reason why is because it doesn't look profitable initially. But what happens when that profit goes up to they? It's much higher than the I could ever get to on their own. You have to be willing to invest in people before they, and you have to invest in the right people, mind you, but you have to be willing to invest in people before they will take your business to the next level.
Love that. Any last questions? Yep.
How does new construction play into your business practice?
It's one of the pillars of our business. So Jeremy Martin, who works on our team, lives out in Tooele, has a relationship with GTM builders, because we went, and presented to them and had already been working with, at the time it was called Henry Walker Homes and Destination Homes. We had a pretty good idea of what we needed to do to secure new construction real estate business. Here's the cool thing that you guys need to realize is new construction right now is a great opportunity, even though there's sort of a backlog of inventory, meaning there's a supply chain issue. And so builders aren't able to build as many as they want. But when the market's doing really good, new construction is always a good place to go look and build a pillar. And if you want to learn more about doing new construction and how to do it, Keller Williams has a ton of training inside of Command on new construction. Steve Ryder does a lot of the coaching for new construction. Lance Loken has done a lot of coaching for new construction, but there's a lot of information that's out there. Again, if you guys are on KW Pivot Shift Ahead page, 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day, you will be aware of these so you can be proactive instead of not being aware of them, which makes you reactive.
Love that. What was that? Was that a Facebook page?
No. It's part of Command, but if you go into KW Command, it's Pivot: Shift Ahead. It's all relevant. It's huge, you guys. Huge. If you take one thing out of this class, it's go to that page every single morning when you wake up for 15 to 30 minutes. And don't get stuck on any one part of that page, because there's a lot of killer content that's in there that is put out by the experts in the industry who are just trying to keep you ahead of what's coming.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Let's share a couple ahas by giving Josh some feedback. What things are you taking away? What are some ahas that you guys got from what he said? Invest in people, consistency, hire an assistant, period. Master the scripts, trust the process, execute 36 touch.
Be action
Don't be afraid of
oriented.
failure.
Be action oriented. Don't just be learning based. Be action oriented. Take action, and don't take action on everything. Just pick one and bring it to the finish line until it's running without your daily input, and then move to the next thing. Otherwise you get squirreled.
Love that. Love that. Josh, thank you so much. I know you can't, it's probably hard to hear. You can only hear through the mic, but let's all give him a round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, Josh.
Thanks for setting us up with your team, Tyler. That's a good thing. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. So we can unpin this. Okay. So what is, so we talked about a couple ahas, but something that is 1000% true in there is education without execution. Really just, I mean, it was time somewhat well spent, right? What do you guys plan on executing today? What's one thing? It can be really small. What is the one thing that you plan on executing? Check out that shift ahead page. That's easy. Yep, that's something that you can do today. What's something else you can do today to move forward, to implement? Narrow down so yeah, maybe she hasn't decided this is what I'm going to do, but she's deciding I'm going to narrow that down and really focus on that. That's perfect. Give it some thought. Better with follow-up. What's one thing that you would do today for that? So schedule it out. Schedule that out. Yeah. Yep. That one, I've learned a ton from Josh over the years. Being an agent, I've been in a lot of his trainings. He's done some over in Salt Lake. I went and joined, and just being there, listening to him. He's always talked about his 36 touch, and it's really simple. He's willing to share so many details, give as many secrets because, and I've talked to him after, and he says, "Yeah, I'll give my whole playbook because I know that 90% of the room is not going to do anything with it." So my challenge today is don't be one of the 90%. Be the 10%. Choose one thing. Make it easy. Whatever it is, easy. Choose something that is so easy that you will for sure get it done today. Whatever that is, make it easy. Don't make it hard. It doesn't have to be hard, but it's one step at a time. The dominoes will fall. And in that, who's read the One Thing book in here? If you haven't, it's one of my favorites, but the visualization of those dominoes, and then one domino would knock over one that's larger until I think it's somewhere in the 30s that it'll reach the moon, like domino number 30 something. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's somewhere in that realm. But it's really, yeah, it's, yep, it's very surprising. So don't overcomplicate it. Think of something that's really simple and really easy, and just decide to execute on that today. Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, well, on that, so I'll make a note and we'll put it out with this video once we get this uploaded and onto our page. That way you guys can reference the video as well if you want to.